You've been told that time heals all wounds, but that is a dangerous lie. Time actually compounds the interest on your emotional debt. Every trauma you ignore isn't disappearing. It's quietly draining your future success and health. Stop waiting for closure to happen naturally. It's costing you more than you realize. Chapter 1. The high cost of living in the past. Emotional debt is the price you pay for wounds you never processed. Not just heartbreak, not just trauma. Every moment you swallowed instead of expressed. Every time you said, "I'm fine," when you weren't. Every time you moved on without actually moving through. That doesn't disappear, it accumulates. And your brain doesn't care about your peace. It cares about your survival. So instead of helping you heal, it helps you adapt. It builds patterns, defense mechanisms, avoidance loops, emotional shortcuts, not to fix the problem, but to keep you functioning. And at first, it works. You stay productive. You keep moving. You tell yourself you're past it. But underneath that, your nervous system is running a marathon it never signed up for. Always alert, always scanning. Always slightly tense, even when nothing is wrong. That's not personality. That's debt. Because unresolved experiences don't stay in the past. They leak into the present. They shape how much energy you have in a day, how quickly you get irritated, how deeply you trust someone, how easily you walk away or stay too long. You think you're making choices freely, but a part of you is still negotiating with old pain. And it's expensive, not just emotionally. Practically, you hesitate when opportunities show up. You overthink simple decisions. You avoid risks or chase the wrong ones. Because something inside you is still trying to protect you from a version of reality that no longer exists. That's the invisible weight. No one sees it, but you feel it. In your exhaustion, in your patterns, in the way certain situations trigger reactions that don't make sense until you trace them back. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You can build discipline, you can chase success, you can optimize your routine, but if you're carrying unresolved emotional debt, everything becomes heavier than it should be. Because you're not just living your current life, you're dragging your past through it. And the worst part, you get used to it. You normalize the weight. You start calling it just how I am. But it's not. It's just what you never cleared. And until you do, you're not operating at full capacity. You're surviving on borrowed energy, paying interest on pain you never chose, but still have to settle. So before you try to move forward faster, ask yourself something simple. What are you still carrying that you've convinced yourself is gone? Because ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. It just makes the cost harder to see and higher to pay. Next, we uncover something even more dangerous. Why avoiding your past doesn't just delay the problem, it multiplies it. Chapter -2. The compound interest of avoidance. Avoidance feels like relief. That's why it's addictive. You distract yourself. You stay busy. You move on quickly. And for a moment, it works. The discomfort fades. The memory blurs. The weight feels lighter. But that's not healing. That's deferral. And deferral always comes with interest. Think about how debt works. You don't feel the full cost immediately. You borrow now and pay later. But later doesn't mean the same amount. It means more, always more. That's exactly how suppressed emotion behaves. Every time you avoid processing something, you're not escaping it. You're delaying the payment, and the delay increases the cost. At first, the interest is subtle. A little more anxiety than usual. A little less patience. A little more overthinking, nothing dramatic. Easy to ignore, but over time it compounds. Because avoidance doesn't just store the pain. It distorts it, it spreads. A small wound becomes a pattern. A single betrayal becomes trust issues. One failure becomes fear of trying again. One rejection becomes a constant need for validation. You're no longer responding to isolated events. You're reacting to an accumulated narrative, and that narrative quietly starts running your life. This is where modern life makes it worse. Because today, distraction is always available. Endless content, endless noise, endless ways to not sit with yourself, and it looks productive. You're working, grinding, chasing goals. Hustle culture gives you a perfect excuse to avoid your inner world. As long as you're moving, you don't have to feel. But movement without processing is just motion, not progress, because while you're building something externally, internally, the debt is growing. Start making minimum payments. Little things that make you feel temporarily better. Scrolling, overworking, seeking validation, jumping into new relationships. They reduce the pressure for a moment, but they don't touch the principle. The core wound remains untouched, and because it's untouched, it keeps generating interest. Eventually, the system catches up, and the payment becomes unavoidable, not as a gentle reminder, but as a disruption. Burnout that doesn't go away with rest. Anxiety that shows up without a clear reason. Emotional reactions that feel out of proportion. Or worse, a complete shutdown, where you don't feel much at all. Not joy, not excitement, not even pain clearly. Just numb. That's not peace, that's overload. A system that's been carrying too much for too long, finally going offline. Here's the part most people don't connect. Emotional debt doesn't just affect how you feel. It affects how you perform. Your focus drops. Your decisions get clouded. Your consistency breaks. You might have the skills. You might have the opportunities, but you don't have the internal clarity to use them fully. Because part of your energy is constantly being redirected to manage what you never processed. And then there are the behavioral leaks, the subtle ways your debt shows up in daily life. You procrastinate on things that matter without knowing why. You avoid certain conversations, even when they are necessary. You overreact in situations that don't justify it. You repeat patterns in relationships, even when you know better. These aren't random flaws. They are symptoms. Signals that something unresolved is still influencing your present. Financially, this matters more than you think, because emotional instability creates inconsistent action, and inconsistency kills momentum. You start things and don't finish them. You doubt decisions midway and pull back. You miss opportunities because fear disguises itself as caution. Not because you lack capability, but because you're carrying unprocessed experiences that distort your judgment. So the cost isn't just emotional, it's practical. It shows up in your results, your growth, your relationships, your ability to stay focused on what actually matters. And the most dangerous part, you can live like this for years, convincing yourself you're fine, until one day, you realize you've been operating at a fraction of your potential. Not because life was unfair, but because something inside you was never settled. Avoidance is not neutral. It's an investment, just not in your favor. Every time you choose not to face something, you're choosing to pay more for it later. So the question shifts. It's no longer, can I ignore this and move on? It becomes, how much is this going to cost me if I don't? Because the debt doesn't disappear. It waits, it grows, and eventually it collects. Next, we stop guessing. We audit. We identify exactly what you're carrying and where it's showing up in your life right now. Chapter -3. Auditing your inner ledger. At some point, you stop running. Not because the past disappears, but because you realize it's been quietly writing your present. So now, instead of avoiding it, you turn around and look at it directly. This is where most people hesitate, because auditing your inner world doesn't feel productive. There's no visible output, No immediate reward, no applause, just you and everything you've been postponing. But this is where control begins. Think of it like this. If emotional debt is real, then somewhere there's a record. Not written on paper, but stored in patterns. Your reactions, your triggers, your habits. They are all entries in your internal ledger. You just haven't been reading them. Start simple. Notice what disrupts you more than it should. Not the obvious things, the small ones. A delayed reply that irritates you more than expected. A minor criticism that stays in your head all day. A situation where you shut down instead of responding. These are not random. They are echoes. Reactions that belong to something older, wearing a new face. Instead of pushing them away, pause. Ask a different question. Not, why am I like this? But when have I felt this before? That shift changes everything. Because now, you're not judging the reaction. You're tracing it backwards to its origin. And often, what you find isn't dramatic. It's subtle. A moment you were dismissed. A time you weren't heard. A situation where you felt powerless and adapted instead of processing it. These are the entries that accumulate. Quietly, this is your first step in auditing. Pattern recognition. Noticing repetition. Because whatever repeats hasn't been resolved. Next, you separate two things most people confuse. Healthy grief and stagnant debt. Grief moves. Slowly, sometimes painfully, but it moves. It allows you to feel, process, and eventually integrate. It doesn't trap you. Debt, on the other hand, loops. It keeps you in the same emotional cycle. You revisit the same thought patterns. You replay the same scenarios. You react the same way again and again. No progression, just repetition. That's how you know something is still unpaid. Now comes the harder part, ownership. Not blame, not self-criticism, ownership. Acknowledging that even if the event wasn't your fault, the unresolved impact is now your responsibility. Because no one else can process it for you. And until you do, it continues influencing everything. So you map it, not mentally, clearly. You take a situation that triggered you recently and you break it down. What happened? What did I feel immediately? What did I do next? Where have I felt this pattern before? And suddenly something clicks. You start seeing connections. How a past experience is shaping a present reaction. How an old wound is influencing a current decision. And that clarity is powerful. Because you can't change what you don't see. But once you see it, you're no longer reacting blindly. This is what auditing really does. It brings unconscious patterns into awareness. It shows you what you're actually carrying, not what you think you are, not what you've told yourself you've moved past, but what is still actively shaping your life. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. You realize that some of your biggest limitations are not external. They are internal loops. You see how certain fears are outdated, how certain defenses are no longer necessary, how certain reactions are protecting a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. And that realization creates a gap, a space between stimulus and response, where you can choose differently. This is the beginning of control, not over the past, but over how it continues to affect you. You don't erase what happened. You understand it. You don't deny the impact. You trace it. You don't rush to fix everything. You identify what actually needs attention. Because once your internal ledger is visible, you stop guessing. You stop saying something feels off. And start saying, this is exactly what's influencing me. And that precision changes how you move forward. You're no longer reacting to shadows. You're working with facts, your patterns, your history. And from that place, you're finally ready for something most people never reach. Not avoidance, not distraction, but resolution. Because the goal isn't just to know what you're carrying. It's to decide what you're going to do with it. Next, we move from awareness to action. not by forcing yourself to get over it, but by learning how to release the weight without losing the lesson. Chapter -4, Strategies for Debt Most People Forgiveness. Healing, erasing, forgetting, moving on, pretending it doesn't matter anymore. But nothing that shaped you deeply can be erased. And trying to erase it is what keeps the debt alive, because you're still fighting it, still resisting it, still treating it like something that shouldn't have happened. But it did, and the more you resist that reality, the heavier it stays. So the shift begins here, not with how do I get over this, but with how do I carry this without it carrying me. Debt forgiveness is not denial, it's integration, taking something that once controlled you and placing it where it belongs. In your past, not erased, but no longer active. The first step is simple, but uncomfortable. You stop avoiding the feeling, not the story, the feeling. Because most people revisit their past intellectually. They analyze it, explain it, rationalize it, but they never actually feel what they avoided. And without feeling, there is no release, only repetition. So instead of thinking your way through it, you sit with it. Without distraction, without escape, without trying to fix it immediately, you let the discomfort surface, the tightness, the heaviness, the unease. And instead of pushing it away, you stay. Because that feeling you've been avoiding, that's the unpaid part. Your body doesn't care about your explanations. It cares about resolution. It needs to register that the threat is over, that what happened is no longer happening, and that doesn't happen through logic alone. It happens through experience. This is where somatic awareness comes in, not complicated techniques, just attention. Where do you feel tension when you think about a certain memory? Your chest, your stomach, your throat. Instead of ignoring it, you focus on it. You breathe through it, not to remove it instantly, but to let your body process what it couldn't at the time. Because back then, you didn't have the space, or the safety, or the awareness. Now you do. And something subtle begins to shift. The memory stays, but the charge reduces. It doesn't hit as sharply. It doesn't control your reaction the same way. That's integration, not forgetting, but neutralizing. The next step is where most people resist. You stop identifying with the version of you that experienced it, not rejecting them, but updating yourself. Because part of emotional debt comes from staying loyal to an old identity. I'm the person who was hurt. I'm the one who was ignored. I'm the one who failed. And without realizing it, you keep reinforcing that identity through your thoughts, your behavior, your expectations. So you set a boundary, not with others, with your past self. You acknowledge what they went through, you respect it. But you don't let it define your present decisions anymore. You don't let it dictate your reactions. You don't let it keep creating new debt. This is where forgiveness becomes practical, not emotional, practical. You forgive not because they deserve it, but because you don't want to keep paying for it. Every time you hold onto resentment, you reopen the account. You add more weight, not to them, to yourself. Forgiveness is closing the loop. Saying, this happened, it mattered, it affected me, but it does not control me anymore. And meaning it through your actions. You stop revisiting it unnecessarily. You stop using it as an excuse for current behavior. You stop letting it justify patterns that no longer serve you, not because it wasn't real, but because it's no longer active. And here's the important part. This doesn't happen once. It happens repeatedly, because layers surface over time. Different memories, different emotions, different realizations. Each one another opportunity to clear something, to reduce the weight. Over time, something changes. You notice you're reacting less intensely. You notice certain triggers don't hit the same way. You notice you're making decisions based on the present, not the past. And that's how you know the debt is reducing. Not because you feel perfect, but because you feel lighter, more in control, more aligned. This is not fast, and it's not comfortable, but it's real. Because the goal was never to erase your past. It was to stop paying for it over and over again. And once you start clearing that weight, you create space. Space that was previously occupied by suppression. Space that can now be used for something else, something better. Next, we shift from clearing debt to building surplus. Because once you stop losing energy to the past, you finally get to decide where that energy goes. Chapter 5. Investing in an emotional surplus. Once the weight starts lifting, something unexpected happens. You don't just feel lighter, you feel available. Energy that was once locked in suppression is suddenly free. And for the first time in a long time, you have a choice. Because before this, you weren't choosing where your energy went. It was being drained, quietly, constantly, automatically. Now, it's yours again. Think about how much effort it takes to hold something down, to not think about it, to not feel it, to keep functioning while carrying it. That effort doesn't disappear. It redirects into tension, into distraction, into inconsistency. But when that suppression reduces, that same energy becomes usable. And this is where most people make a mistake. They clear the debt, but don't change how they invest. So the old patterns slowly return, not because they failed, but because they didn't build something new. An emotional surplus is not just feeling good. It's having more internal resources than you immediately need, more clarity than confusion, more stability than reactivity, more intention than impulse. It's the difference between surviving your day and actually directing it. So where does this surplus go? First, into creation, not necessarily art. Creation in the broader sense. Building something, learning something, expressing something honestly. Because creativity thrives on available energy. And for a long time, you didn't have that availability. Now you do, and when you channel it into something meaningful, it compounds. Not like debt, but like growth. Second, into connection, real connection. Not the kind built on validation or dependency, but the kind built on presence. Because when you're not carrying unresolved weight, you listen differently. You respond differently. You're not projecting your past onto people. You're seeing them as they are. And that changes the quality of every relationship you have. Less neediness, less defensiveness, less misinterpretation, more clarity, more honesty, more depth. Third, into real-time processing. This is where the system becomes sustainable, because the goal isn't just to clear past debt. It's to stop creating new debt, and that requires something simple but rare. You feel things when they happen, not weeks later, not years later. In the moment, you acknowledge discomfort early. You address issues before they build up. You express what needs to be expressed without delay. And by doing that, nothing accumulates. There's no backlog, no hidden weight building in the background. This is what most people never learn. They either suppress everything or react to everything. But there's a middle ground, processing, calm, direct, honest. And when you live there consistently, your emotional system stays clean. Not perfect, but clear. And with that clarity, your decisions improve. Because they are not influenced by old noise. They're based on current reality. You choose opportunities without unnecessary fear. You walk away from situations without hesitation. You commit to things without internal resistance, because nothing unresolved is pulling you in the opposite direction. This is where self-accountability becomes powerful. Not harsh, not critical, but precise. You don't blame your past anymore. You don't use it as an excuse. You recognize it, but you don't operate from it. You take responsibility for how you respond now, fully. And that responsibility is freedom. Not the kind that lets you do anything, but the kind that lets you act without internal conflict, where your thoughts, emotions, and actions are aligned, where you're not fighting yourself while trying to move forward. Visualize this for a moment, a life where your mind is not constantly revisiting old scenarios, where your energy is not tied up in unresolved tension, where your reactions match the situation, not your history, where you're fully present without something pulling you back. That's not unrealistic, that's just unburdened. And from that place, growth becomes natural, not forced, not exhausting, because you're no longer dragging weight, you're moving freely. This is what an emotional surplus gives you. Not just relief, but capacity. Capacity to think clearly, to act decisively, to connect deeply, to build consistently. And once you experience that, you don't want to go back. Not to suppression, not to avoidance, not to carrying things that no longer belong in your present. Because now you understand something most people don't. Your past may have shaped you, but it doesn't have to fund your future. And the moment you stop paying for it, you start investing in something far more valuable. Yourself.